The year I was friends with a master manipulator. Before the story begins, I would like to give you the following trigger warning: eating disorders, suicidal ideation, talks of sexual assault. This encounter is not about that though. Manipulation, witchcraft, spiritual and cult-like behavior will all be mentioned in the following story. With all that out of the way, let's begin. Now, I've been sitting alone all day, at home due to a storm, and I think I finally feel ready to speak about my experience with a girl I met in college. No one has ever heard the full story, and I'm ready to tell most of it right here, right now. Now, to preface, I am 23 years old. I'm a female, and this happened to me roughly when I was 19 going to 20 at the time of meeting this girl. I'm writing these lines in the middle of March of the year 2023. I was also in an unstable and codependent relationship at the time, and I was utterly depressed. I was naive, and I was carving a sense of validation of my thoughts and feelings that no one around me at the time was willing to give me. So, subsequently, I was the perfect candidate to inflate and dote upon the literal God-complexed ego of this one girl. To begin, I was in an acting 101 class, my first semester of college, and I swore to myself that I wouldn't make friends in the 2 years that I was set to be there. This was a community college. I was to go in, get good grades, and leave. It wasn't until the third day, a week and a half since the semester started, and this girl walks in, and you could feel the air in the room grow thin. Her presence was both alluring and yet annoying at the same time. Charisma seemed to ooze out of her pores and shine like a halo from her hair. Now, for some context, I am from the United States, and when this girl began to speak with a British accent, everyone was confused, yet intrigued. Apparently, she had just gotten here from a trip back to England with her father. Apparently, she was originally from there. Then, when my first instinct ran clear, I was wondering, why on earth is it that, if she has enough money to be flying to and from England, what was she doing in an acting 101 class at a community college? What the heck was she doing there? I decided that my curiosity was too frivolous and kept it to myself until the next class, when she asked me a question that I unfortunately no longer remember. However, I do remember my initial disgust with her demeanor. She seemed too bubbly, too poised. Something was just off. After that brief encounter, I felt that was entirely all that I would ever hear from her. However, slowly, she would make remarks to me during the class, and eventually I started striking conversations as well. Then, one day after class, she mentions to me how expensive and annoying it is that she has to wait for an Uber every time the class ends. I remember offering her a ride home as an alternative, but she would dramatically decline, saying things like how her parents would get angry with her for burdening me with the task of driving her around. I understood and felt pity for her after that. In that moment, I thought that she was in a household where her parents were overbearing and slightly abusive. So, I decided I would try and befriend her outside of class. She seemed nice enough. Also, I had this pang in my heart to help her for some reason, and that's exactly what she wanted. So, over time, as we grew closer, I would offer her a ride home. I would insist and say that I'm her friend and that friends help each other out. She seemed to enjoy these gestures. She would compliment me and then go on to say how tough her life is without a license. Eventually, she agreed and I took her home. I was really surprised, but also it was honestly really nice to have someone to talk with about class, outside of class. Soon enough, after driving her home, the past few classes, she invited me in for tea. I thought that it was adorable, having afternoon tea and gossiping with a friend. I mean, she was British, after all. We both eventually opened up about ourselves and spoke on things besides class. She told me that she was my age. She graduated the same year as me and also took a gap year. I mean a sabbatical. She said that throughout school she would travel to and from England, and I found it so fascinating. She was adopted from a third world country and she was brought to England and then moved to her current town when she was 6. She told me about past relationships. I opened up about mine. She always seemed to be the same as me, like she was trying to emulate me in some way. It was so subtle. It was difficult to take notice at first. If I told her about the apprehension I felt in my current relationship, she would sympathize and tell me a story about how her ex hurt her even worse. I would always take note of the things she said because I was not only her friend, but we seemed to share the same experiences. However, hers were always more severe than mine. In hindsight, I know why it was like that, but at the time, I just thought about how unlucky this girl was and how bad I felt for her past. Soon, it became a tradition to drink tea at her house after class, but I had to be out before her mom got home, and if I were to meet her mother, it would be bad. One day, her mom got home early and was surprised, yet delighted to see me. She introduced herself and I did the same, all while my friend sat and sulked in anger. Her mother seemed delightful, and I was surprised at how welcoming she was. She offered me food and gave me some crackers to take home. I eventually confronted my friend, asking why she would paint her mother to be that way. She said that she was just kinder to guests than to her. I was confused, but I also fully understood. I have a mother who is very similar to that, so I decided to shake it off. And I did. I shook it off. One day in class, we get our midterm assignments. We were to prepare a non-verbal monologue in front of the class. We each get our assigned stage directions and we are asked to prepare it in 2 weeks. One of the stage directions was that a girl comes home crying after having been sexually assaulted. Another girl in our class received this one but was uncomfortable doing it, and rightfully so. A boy in that class criticized her for not wanting to do it, and she ran out of the classroom. My friend and I followed her. The three of us opened up about our past assaults and eventually calmed our classmate down. Time passes after that class, and a few classes later, when I was walking with my friend to my car, she all of a sudden runs away from me. I follow her, and I'm laughing at her. She had fallen ungracefully to the ground, and she was in the grass on her knees. I asked what she was doing. I asked why she was being a weirdo. What she did was related to our conversation. She looks up at me with some kind of strange fear in her eyes and says that she saw her assaulter just then on the campus. I was shaking at this point because I don't remember seeing anyone walk anywhere near us. She said that he walked by and stared at her with evil intent. Completely evilly. I was very confused and said that she must have imagined that. But she was adamant. I was also even more confused because she had told me that she had filed a restraining order against him. How could he be allowed on campus? If he really wanted to go to this same school, there were 2 campuses in 2 different towns, so surely he could have gone to the other campus. I asked all these questions, and I was met with little answer, obviously. She said that she would talk to her mother and handle it accordingly. It took weeks to even hear anything about it. I wanted her to bring it up, but she never did. So, I eventually asked, and she gave me a story about how she went to the dean's office after class and fixed things. I remember being confused because I had driven her after all of our classes. She said that they went after I left, but that couldn't have been because the school offices closed after 5 and I would always leave at 5. Many of my questions were met with strange excuses, but I remember just letting it go. This was a sore subject after all, and I didn't want to upset her any more than she already was. Weeks pass, and my friend and I become eventually totally inseparable. We seem to know the ins and outs of each other. We even hosted a Friendsgiving together at her house with some of the people from our acting class. Then, the end of the semester came and I could feel the rift grow between us. I was confused and hurting. She said that she wasn't going for a degree and was just there to take the acting class. I remember being confused. I thought she was a theater major like me, and she said that she was, but I guess that she changed her mind. She said that she was to be auditioning for LAMDA, Lambda, London Academy of Dramatic Arts in NYC, early the next year, and she was probably going to get in and was to never see me again. I remember feeling completely confused. Why didn't she tell me this sooner? Why did she even get close to me in the semester? Then I thought about how it was probably my fault that I pushed her to be my friend. But I just felt so bad for her. It was like she was asking for a friend without telling me. Eventually, I convinced her that it would be good for her to be in a class with me again the next semester, partly because I wanted to selfishly keep her close, and the other part because I knew, from what she told me, that if she never got into Lambda, LAMDA, that she would probably end her life. I feared for my friend so much that I wanted to push her to be in a class with me, because she had somehow made me think that I was helping her not kill herself. So, she signed up for the class and decided to audition with me for the spring musical. But she wasn't to go with me because she auditioned alone and couldn't talk to anyone before she sang, which I guess was understandable. Soon her audition for LAMDA rolls around and I manage to come with her and her parents for that weekend. New York City is about an afternoon train ride away, and her parents were kind enough to pay for my ticket. How I managed to be invited was by her telling me how scared and terrified she was to be with her parents on this trip. So I offered to come, to be a buffer zone between her and her parents' evil ways. I was met with polite no's, and eventually, just like all my kind offers, I was then met with a yes. Besides, I love New York City, and when I learned I didn't have to pay, I was even more excited. Now, for those who are this far, I want you to understand, if you haven't already, it wasn't like I was begging this girl to let me do anything for her. She'd answer me in a way that made things seem like I had to insist, like if I didn't ask again, she would be hurt, and it would be my fault. So, in other, simpler words, I was being manipulated into doing things for her, but it never felt like it, because I meant it. I was much more generous to friends I had just met at the time then. So, I arrived in Grand Central Station and I was met with my friend and her mother. We walk to the hotel and everything seems normal. We go to sleep and I wake up. And to be honest, all I remember about that trip was how scared I sort of was of this new virus going around. Yes, it was January 2020, and how surprisingly, her parents seemed to be such angels. I remember going to shops with them, and they were just talking about how my friend would like this, and how they wanted to make this for my friend, and how we should go here after my friend was out of the audition. All her parents talk about was my friend. I was floored. I remember her telling me to stay in the room all day, to ignore her parents, but I didn't want to. I now see why. Eventually, we made our way to the New York's public library. I remember going to the top floor, taking a picture of the painted ceiling, standing for about a minute. And then, her parents find me and say that they have to go meet my friend right now. She was in need of some cherry-colored chapstick and some water. They told me to stay, that they would meet me later and to explore the city. I said, absolutely not. I was not walking around alone in this massive city, no way. So I went with them. I witnessed their panic as they tried to hurry to her audition and find water and the right chapstick in time. All the while, my friend is texting them exactly what she wants and telling them to hurry. We walked about 20 minutes to this building. 20 minutes. My parents won't even come downstairs to tell me something, let alone walk that far to bring me a water and a chapstick. They decided too that it would take too much time to get a cherry-colored chapstick, and my friend would have to use just a plain one from her mom's purse. We get to the building and meet with her in the lobby. She goes to her parents and sees that they have no cherry chapstick and not the right water. She's furious. She gets mad and just storms into the audition room, never even saying thank you. After that, we go and sit in a Panera Bread and wait another 20 minutes. Eventually, she gets out of her audition and meets us inside. She then was adamant on alienating me from her parents and only wanted to talk to me about her audition. She tells me the story, and I can't help but think she's lying about it all. It all just seemed bizarre, but I don't remember the details. I just remember after the story I told her about my day with her parents, and she was very upset with me for spending my time with them. She scolded and asked what we had talked about over and over again for the rest of our trip. We went to sleep, and we left the next day. I remember feeling very weirded out with my friend after the trip. She seemed to be a lot more abrasive with me afterwards and adamant on me not speaking to her parents. Eventually, I learned that the name she had told me she had was actually not her legal name. Eventually, I saw that she had a high school diploma from 2019 and not 2018. I asked her about it, and she said that she got a misprint. The misprint turned into her graduating late because she was in the mental hospital a lot. Yeah, she went to mental health programs, but also traveled back and forth to England, but also went to school 2 days a week her senior year. She said she did her senior year twice, and she only lived in England when she was a child. She actually lived in England most of her life. Nothing was adding up. All the stories she eventually told never made sense together. I remember half-jokingly asking her to write a timeline of her life for me because the things never added up. Still, despite all the inconsistencies, I still kept her as a friend. The lies were just far apart from each other to feel like maybe I was the one who was wrong. The cognitive dissonance was growing in my mind, and this was just the beginning. Now, before I met my friend, I had begun practicing the Wiccan religion. That is Wiccan, Wiccan. I was a solitary Wiccan who lived by the rite, and you harm none, do what you will. I was actively practicing altruism as a form of devotion to the Wiccan moon goddess and horned god. My friend, coincidentally, was also a practicing Wiccan. We had done full moon rituals together, and she seemed to know a lot more than I did. So, I usually followed her lead when it came to rituals. They started out tame, making a candle manifestation wish outside, sitting under the moonlight, meditating together. We'd make our wishes out loud, thus getting to know each other's deepest desires. We were very emotionally vulnerable in these moments together, and after our rituals, we try all kinds of divination and other spiritual practices. We were like our own little coven. One full moon, just before I had to leave, I asked my friend to do a tarot reading for me on my love life. I had just recently had a fight with my then boyfriend, and I wanted to know what she saw. My friend seemed to have all the answers about my life when it came to divination, and I was trusting of her enough to hear about it. She started pulling cards and read the descriptions. Every single card she pulled was a bad one. It said that we would end up in failure, hardship, despair, that I had to leave him ASAP. I remember wanting to, but didn't know how. I left that night crying over how horrible that card reading went. To jump back in the timeline, After we started our second semester classes, I remember opening up to some other classmates that my friend and I were witches. I did it in a way to offer spells for help, but my friend was mad at me for outing us. We never wanting them knowing what we did. I was confused. I wanted to help others and invite them into our little world that I love so much, but my friend seemed to see it differently. So, I respected her boundary and never brought up our practicing again to others outside of my personal life. Eventually, as I know all of you have guessed, the pandemic started in March 2020. Classes were moved to online and so was our friendship. We would FaceTime almost every day and watch movies while on call. Now, at my college, the musical was cast before lockdown and I unfortunately didn't get in, but my friend did. She met all the other theater majors and started talking them in their Discord chat during the pandemic. I was never brought into that circle by her until the summer of 2020. And during that time, and even before lockdown, my friend would try to date the boys in the department and even grew an obsession with two of them. She had told the boys, the first one, who I'm actually dating and now, lol, that she was friends with his favorite Broadway star and that she would have them meet. He never believed her. After he turned her down, she became angry and started a rumor that he was actually gay. After that, she moved on to another guy who had a girlfriend at the time. She was even more obsessed with him. She enjoyed the chase, the fact that he was her friend, and stayed up late and spoke to her all night made her so happy. He had opened up to me and said that she was never the only one he spoke to, and that he was just a night owl doing his job and she would just be one of the only people up to talk to. During the course of 2 months during lockdown, and when people began to feel a bit more comfortable, my friend and I had talked about her maybe moving into my house. Now, I have a large room in my parents' basement, and my friend was beginning to scare me with her talks of her parents are awful to her when she is home with just them. I also have yet to mention that she had an older brother with a form of autism among other issues, and she would talk about how mean he was to her. She's constantly calling me, saying that she was going to kill herself. I was terrified and I decided to open up my home to her. This was the worst but best mistakes I have ever made. Worst because of the escalation of our friendship getting worse, but the best because it really had me realize how awful and manipulative she truly was. She moved in and everything was great. It was nice to be with someone whom I consider my bestest friend. It was like a never-ending sleepover. I had a spare bed in my room at the time, and she used that for a while until she brought her mattress in and eventually moved almost all her things in. Everything she had, however, reeked. Everything smelled like BO, and when she lived here, she never showered. She'd stay here 5 days a week, and 2 at her house. She refused to use our shower, and never change her clothes. She would just sit on one side of my room and rot for days, only getting up to use the bathroom and pick up DoorDash. She would eat on my side of the room and leave her mess for me to pick up. Eventually, I bought a large trash barrel for us to use, and she would fill it up almost daily. I would try to do moon rituals with her, and she would refuse to practice with me. I would ask for a tarot reading, and she would refuse. However, the prophecies didn't stop. They just got worse. Instead of tarot readings, I would get dream recalls. She would tell me all these amazing dreams she would have. They were said to be prophetic dreams brought to her by the goddess Aphrodite, whom she claimed to work with and worship. While I was outside doing my moon rituals, she would tell me I'd be a famous actress and I'd date K-pop stars. I'd see the world and I'd be an amazing celebrity. Obviously, I didn't believe her at first, but she'd tell her stories in such a way that it would give me hope. Hope that my hard work would actually pay off. She had the guidance of Aphrodite on her side, delivering her these messages. I wanted to believe her so bad that I shoved all logic aside and clinged to the future reality that she was feeding me. I was no longer in a sad and crumbling relationship. I would be cast in shows. I'd be happy one day. And that was truly all I wanted. Soon, during that summer, my friend would have another friend over. We would all hang out, but this new girl was more a friend of my friend than mine. Eventually, however, my friend began to actively try to keep us from seeing each other, but it never really worked because eventually me and this other girl became close. We would even work out together in my room while my friend sulked in the corner, eyes closed, listening to music and ignoring us every time we invited her to join us. Also, around that time, my friend invited over the boy that she was obsessing with. Now, this is not my story to tell. Despite the anonymity, I just don't feel comfortable sharing the exact details of this boy's encounter with my friend. But what happened was later told to me by this particular boy. He told me on one particular night in which I was at my then boyfriend's house. This incident happened in my bedroom, however, and its details still haunt me to this day. Though, rest assured, nothing too horrible escalated, but if it weren't for some sort of intervening that I can't remember the details of, I don't know what my friend would have truly done to him. I remember after that night, despite not knowing what had happened, my friend grew even more malicious towards me. She began to sow the seeds of the fear of the Greek gods into me, saying that they were angry with me, and that was why I was having a bad day, or more like multiple bad days. That was why my boyfriend and I were always fighting. I was doing things wrong, and it was driving me wild that I didn't know what it was exactly. All I knew was that I was upsetting the powers above me by just existing, and that was why my life was currently a mess. So, one night, one desperate and hollow night, I asked my friend again about my future and what I was doing wrong. She looked at me and said,
"Do you want it from me or Aphrodite?"
I looked up to her and I said,
"From Aphrodite. I want it from Aphrodite."
My friend enters a meditative state and then looks to me in an evil, sadistic way. Her demeanor had changed entirely. I have never seen and have yet to see anything quite like that. I was told that the reason why I was having such horrible days was because I had to break up with my boyfriend. I had to do it soon, or else nothing in my life would become true. No fame, no success, no happiness. If I didn't do it by the next full moon, that my life would be stagnant. That I'd amount to nothing. It was so convincing. I can still feel the primal fear I felt right then and there. My friend took the bracelet I had been wearing. That was from my boyfriend. She took it off of me and held it. She told me, still through the persona of Aphrodite, that I was being held down by this bracelet, and that in order to rid myself of my boyfriend once and for all, I had to get rid of it, and soon. I was tasked to toss it into a lake an hour away from me, and to do it only with my friend. But I had to break up with my boyfriend first, before ridding myself of the cursed bracelet. I was stunned. I didn't know what to feel. My friend left the so-called trance and never recalled a thing. I told her about the encounter, how scared I was, the fear of being smitten, of disobeying an ancient deity. She told me that I never had to do it. I think it was because she was scared of what she had done to me. Maybe she thought she went too far. Or maybe it was just all a part of the act to get me to do what she wanted. I'm not entirely sure, but I was adamant on leaving my damn boyfriend. I have worked up the courage, and I did it a few days later, but everything still felt off. A few days after that, we drove with another friend of mine up to that lake. I invited that friend because I was just scared to go with only my manipulative friend, and I remember her being angry with me for inviting this other girl, but I didn't care. I knew something was off. There needed to be more people, and I'm so glad for this, because I'm not sure what would have happened to me. We were entirely off the grid when we got there. The GPS stopped working 5 minutes before arriving at the lake, and we got lost trying to leave. It was truly a surreal experience, and me and that other friend never felt truly safe during that entire trip, and my evil friend was all too calm. After that, my friend moved out of my house. I remember we got into a fight. It was a night when she got mad at me for missing my ex. She had wanted me to cuddle her, and I wasn't comfortable with it. And so she went to her side of the room and sulked, waiting for me to beg her to come back, but I never did. We just went to sleep. The next day, I went to go speak to my ex about our breakup, finalize things, give things back. I came home to my friend pretending to sleep. She was laying in the dark, smiling. I told her to cut the shit and talk to me. I explained where I was, and she said she knew that my mom told her, which was actually true. We talked about how she's not getting better. She was cutting herself again. She wasn't eating. She was laying around all day. She made excuses when I tried to help her change her habits. I was worried, but every time I voiced my concern, I was met with excuses and blame for being concerned. So, a few days later, she called me and told me that she would never change, and that I'd love to live with her the way that she was. At that time, she adopted having been diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder and claimed to always have had it. I didn't believe her because she only started saying she had that after watching some Netflix K-drama about a woman with the same diagnosis. I was finally starting to piece together all the lies she told me. I also found out, a little before our fight, that she was actually a year younger than me. After having seen her ID, she explained that the reason that was because her parents changed her birthday after she was adopted because they wanted a younger baby. She accused her parents of committing forgery. I wanted to take action, but she never did, because it was a lie. Her chosen name was also a lie. She told me so many stories for the reason why she went by a different name after I found out her given name. Her accent was fake. She never lived in England. I believe she made that up after the trip she went on right before classes. I finally saw that everything was a lie. When she moved out, She left all her things at my house. So, my sister and I packed our stuff up and brought it to her house. She told me that she wasn't home and couldn't help us, that she had to get adult diapers for her dying grandma, who was always dying. She also said I wasn't allowed to bring her things inside and to leave it all in her mudroom. After we had packed everything in her mudroom, my friend walks out from her backyard, dressed in the fanciest outfit I have yet to see her, and gets into the car with the boy she was obsessed with, completely ignoring me and my sister. She never even said thank you. I was furious. I housed this girl. I'd cook her meals if she never ate. I listened to her. I did everything in my power to care for her. And all I got was a massive fuck you and my life in shambles. I tried confronting her on her lie, and I was met with countless, inconsistent, and self-deprecative excuses. So, I just gave up and never spoke to her again. She blocked me on everything after that, and never spoke to anyone from my college, ever again. She's gone from social media as well. All of her accounts were changed or deactivated. To conclude, I eventually got back together with that boyfriend and recently broke up with him on my own terms. I just wasn't ready to let go at the time. I still practice witchcraft, not just Wiccan. And I am so much more educated than I was 3 years ago. Like I said, I have a new boyfriend now, and I'm also bestest friends with the other girl who my evil friend introduced me to. I have my associate's degree in theater arts, and I've done a lot of work in 1 year for my local theater community. I plan to move to New York City this summer. My life is amazing now that I have that friend, among others, out of my life. I still, at times, blame myself for being so naive and so trusting. I blame myself for the hurt I caused and how everything happened. I'm much more guarded now, but also a lot more headstrong. I also haven't made a new friend since, but I'm currently okay with that. There are many more lies she told that I eventually figure out were lies, but that would just be too much to write, and honestly I don't remember the timeline too clearly at some parts. But I wrote here what I do know it's right. But anyways, thank you all so much for reading this. If you have any further questions and want clarity, let me know. I aspire to also be a writer, so I hope this isn't too flowery of a format. I just love language. But thank you again. And to my old friend, I hope I never see you again for as long as I live.